Now, unless we reconcile, now we set ourselves for another 50 years of development in Africa, of integration. Obviously, how can you integrate Africa when we are fighting each other? So the most important thing is to engender peace and security in Africa. It will not take you 1 year to do so. Some of these conflicts are so deeply entrenched that it will require the concerted effort and sincerity of all African leaders. So it will not take 2 years, 3 years. It will take almost 10 years for us to end all conflicts and then reconcile and ensure peace and security. Until we do so, this 50 years, 2030 to 2063 would be an elusive dream. So without peace and stability, let us not talk about development. Look at the example, a country like Syria. Who can talk about development there today? Because of the conflicts, Syria was a self-sufficient country. They never imported oil from anybody. They never took a loan from IMF and the World Bank or any Westerner. Today, Syria is destroyed. It's reduced to the Stone Age. How many years would it take to rebuild? So I think we have seen examples of that. We have seen what happened in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and other conflict countries. So we need to make sure that there is reconciliation. Because even at the end of the conflict, you have deeply rooted wounds in any particular country that also need to be addressed by reconciliation. So we need at least 10 years to devote ourselves to peace and reconciliation, and then alongside development, but after the peace and stability is entrenched, development will come automatically.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
President Jammeh speaking to reporters shortly after his arrival from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. In Addis Ababa, while addressing fellow leaders, President Jammeh urged them to dedicate the period 2013 to 2023 as decade for African reconciliation and establishment of permanent peace in Africa. The Gambian leader was speaking Sunday during the opening of the 21st ordinary session of the Assemblies of Heads of State and Governments of the African Union. Abdunjari reports on the convergence, which also coincided with the Golden Jubilee of the continent's main political body.
It is one of for leaders of the continent who march into Addis Ababa in an upbeat mood, hoping to build on the rich legacy of the past 50 years. They were all queuing up to commemorate the formation of the Organization of African Unity, which later transformed into the African Union. Its birth 50 years ago was pioneered by heroes and heroines of our time who fought hard to turn the tide toward Africa, a continent that continues to pay heavily for the neglect and exploitation by the imperial governments. They wielded power and authority in a rather unorthodox fashion, legitimizing the African struggle for recognition and respect. African Renaissance was the chosen theme of the anniversary summit at the AU headquarters. There the continent's leaders explore efforts in redefining the momentum in shaping the African agenda of 2063.
We of the Caribbean, North and South America, who belong to the African family, need not go beyond the 17th century to trace our indisputable genealogical ancestry. Our DNA is indelibly and unmistakably African.
Integration has been the spirit driving this movement, for it seems pretty safe now to assume that Africa is on the rise.
Africa has taken stock of her past and came out very well resolved, to remedy the situation, to correct the wrongs that have been around with us and has really affected our progress. And it is indeed very encouraging, to see that most of the African leaders, all of them that spoke, really acknowledge, years of existence of the OAU. Indeed, there were reasons to celebrate. Also recognizing the founding fathers, their sacrifices to the liberation of Africa. Today, it was actually paying tribute, to those founding fathers and taking cue from, their sense of sacrifice, their sense of love and devotion to African progress, African prosperity.
The Golden Jubilee celebration was already in full swing at the Millennium Hall, bringing together Africa's finest brains in the performing arts. It engendered a strong spiritual connection in exhuming the injustices of the past while seeking a new era for the present generation of Africans.
And we are forced to work to feed the white wars, and they cut our rebel hands and heads, and they deported worthy leaders to distant prisons, and the guns plunged into our lungs, and the Bible plunged into our brains.
The goals of such summits have been about improving the economic and political outlook of the continent, and the 24th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Governments of the African Union, which opened on Sunday, was no different.
It's been wonderful, going well, extremely well. The celebration yesterday went very well indeed. We reflected on the past, and we take account of the present, and we look forward to a glorious future.
The youth and women agenda were at the forefront of the deliberations, strongly suggesting the essentiality of succession to keep Africa's current flow into the future. This also calls for hard talk, led by the principal architect of truth at the August Assembly.
If we follow the UN resolution, it will be going back and forth because it has been going back and forth. I think it is high time that we work together with Morocco and the Sahrawi people for a permanent and acceptable resolution to the conflict. Also, with regards to peace and security in Africa, I think we've committed ourselves to 2013 and 2063, another 50 years. We all know that development cannot take place without development cannot take place without peace and stability. And unless we commit ourselves to resolving all the problems that we have in the continent, whatever we yearn for in next 50 years will become an elusive dream. So I would propose that since this is the 50th anniversary, we should declare 2013 to 2023 a decade for African reconciliation and establishment of permanent peace in Africa.
The President's intervention was cross-cutting with regards to the complex problems highlighted. Chief among them is the International Criminal Court in relation to its indictment of Kenya's new leader.
Chairman, also let us, when we are making statements, let us go to the facts. I'm not defending anybody, but with regards to the ICC, it was the Kenyans that invited the ICC when they had the problem, when they could have solved the problem in their own country. So our brother Uhuru Kenyatta was indicted before becoming a president at the invitation of the then Kenyan government. For example, let us take the issue of Libya. When the ICC wanted to intervene arbitrarily, Libya made it very clear that they have own laws to try Saif al-Islam. Why didn't Kenya do the same thing? Now that he is the president, if Kenya resolves that we no longer want the ICC to solve the problem, it is right for us to support the Kenyan position. But the ICC, maybe minus, even with regards to Bashir, some of us were pushing for the AU to pass a resolution supporting the indictment of Bashir. So I think let us not say something today and then tomorrow condemn what we said as if somebody did it.
The problem, as highlighted, is a result of double standard engineered from within the bloc with the aim of creating discord in the African Union's membership. These are evidence-based, and the audacity to utter them may have alone produced this united